Welcome back to the Geelong Regional Footy Show, and we're talking Geelong Football League action with Josh Conway. And of course, we've got two very, very big games coming up this weekend. Let's look at the first one. It's Bell Park versus St Mary's.
Yeah, qualifying final. Wes, good evening to you and good evening to everyone. Finals is upon us, and what a fantastic time here. Everyone's a bit more excited, everyone's a bit more free-flowing, and the footy's often a better standard, and you certainly think that'll be the case this weekend in the Bell Park game. We've moved to Simmons Stadium in the qualifying final. They get the double chance to play St Joey's in the preliminary final. The victor of that game will play the undefeated St Joey's. They went through the whole home and away season undefeated after the last round last weekend. It'll be an interesting game. There's not really a clear favourite on those games. It's really a bit of 50-50 at the moment.
Going to a big ground like Simmons Stadium, though, clearly that's going to favour one of the sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to Tim Sheringham, the Bell Park co-coach, over the weekend, and he said he was pretty excited to be getting on Simmons Stadium. But there's still probably a question mark, certainly in my eyes, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, that with Bell Park's game style, very heavily contested side, they've got a lot of big bodies, and there's probably a few question marks over the way they can cover the ground. Hamlin Park's a very tight and congested ground. They use that to their advantage a lot. They get a lot of stoppages, and they let their big bodies do the work. They bullied Colac on the weekend, beat them by 28 points, another contender who'll play the elimination final on the Sunday. So Simmons Stadium, a lot wider, a lot bigger, obviously, and St Mary's are a young, youthful and exuberant team that will probably try to expose them on the outside a bit more than say a Colac would on the weekend at Hamlin Park.
Well, having said that, St Mary's are quite accustomed to a smallish ground that can sometimes be a little bit heavy in the middle, that centre wicket area. Yeah,
absolutely. The ground dimensions often vary. Colac Central Reserve is a very, very big ground with very wide wings and open forward flanks. So it does vary through the competition. St Joey's is another one who play on a pretty small ground, but doesn't seem to hinder them once they get on Simmons Stadium.
Well, tell us about the way the two games have gone prior to this one between the two clubs.
Yeah, so it's 2-0 to Bell Park so far this year. It was a close run thing 3 weeks ago, second last round of the year. It was a 1-point game. St Mary's came back. They were 20 points behind at three-quarter time and came all the way back to eventually pinch the lead in the dying moments until the final minute when Jackson Bright kicked a set shot to win the game by a point for Bell Park. So there's not much separating them, and it should be a fantastic contest.
Well, the other game is, of course, between Colac and Leopold, and this one, once again, introduces the element of a new ground that the players aren't particularly accustomed to. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the elimination final on the Sunday, so a cutthroat, the loser, will be out of the final series. Colac have always been in the top 2 and 3 for the majority of the year, so for them to finish fourth, it would be a disappointment. The weekend's game against Bell Park was a virtual playoff for the double chance. So for them to miss that, they would be disappointed, I would imagine, because, as I say, through the particularly first half of the year, they had the double chance pretty much sewed up until the final few rounds. The ground dimensions, as you say, spoke to Kane Learson about the change of ground as well, and as I mentioned, Central Reserve is a big ground and they like to use that, so I think Colac will be pretty confident going to Simmons Stadium, and of course I think you can't underestimate the fact that they've done it before. Learson himself won the premiership with Colac in 2014, so I think that past experience comes in to help a lot once you get back onto Simmons Stadium.
For either of these sides to go all the way, they're going to need to play pretty much every week. So can either of these two sides actually do that?
Yeah, look, I think Colac have a good chance. So Grovedale make the preliminary final from 5th last year, so it can be done. Leopold, I would say they're probably the least likely of the two to go all the way through to the grand final, just only because of the injuries they have had this year. They've been trying to rush minutes into players that probably aren't quite there with their match fitness late in the year. And that just opens yourself up, particularly on the wider and bigger grounds, to further injuries and just fatigue and what have you. So Colac will probably go into the fitter side, and that counts for a lot, particularly in finals footy when we know the intensity really lifts up.
How many sides can potentially win the flag this year?
Yeah, I was going to mention to you before, Wes, I think it's a 3-horse race, to be fair. I think St Joey's sit in their own echelon all by themselves. Obviously, without losing a game, it's going to take a hell of an effort to beat them. A team will hopefully get them on an off day, and that'll be their chance to knock them off. And I don't think Colac are just quite there. I think Bell Park and St Mary's are probably just in the echelon above. And then it's Colac and Leopold. Maybe a bit harsh on Colac, but from what I saw on the weekend in the broadcast game, There's just a few too many holes in their team at the moment, I feel, particularly compared to Bell Park and St Mary's, who are season-hardened, battle-hardened teams. Colac are a bit of a younger group. While that can be an advantage, I think on this occasion they're probably overperformed, if anything, this year. But going forward, they'll be right up there.
Well, we saw 7 clubs enjoy, and I say that with inverted commas, Mad Monday. And that means their season is over, certainly in the senior department. Just a reflection on the fortunes of the 7 clubs. I know you've spoken at length about Newtown and the young list they've got there, and also North Shore and the improvement that they demonstrated, and how within a couple of weeks of the finals they're actually still a chance to make it. So just some thoughts on the 7 sides that aren't in action.
Yeah, absolutely. So Newtown, as you mentioned, finished 6th, so just outside the finals race, and North Shore finished 7th. So the Seagulls have gone from 2 wins last year to 7 this year, which is a marked improvement. Had the advantage of having a softer draw due to their ladder position last year, which helped them had to play the big 5, I guess you'd call them, once this year, unlike other sides. But I was just looking through it on the weekend, Wes, and just going through the sides that missed the finals and just trying to re-rank them and where I think they sit going forward. I think Grovedale had probably a year out of the blue, that made a preliminary final, as I mentioned, last year, and to finish 8th was a really bad year for the Tigers. But they get a new coach next year, some fresh eyes. They've still got a very, very strong core list. They've got the Delaney brothers. There's 3 of them going around. They've got a Matheson medalist in their midfield, Nathan Deans. They've got plenty of stocks. So I think this year they put the cue in the rack pretty early when they realised they couldn't make the finals. They blooded some kids, giving them some experience. I think next year, given they'll have the opportunity to reload, I think you'll see them come back into the final 5. I still think Newtown are the second best side outside of this year's finals race, then North Shore. I think South Barwon will be okay. They're another side who have blooded a fair few kids this year, and that'll pay off in the long run. I think St Albans are going the right way. They've had a very, very good final 2 months of the year. And while they finished below Geelong West on the ladder this year, I think you'll see in the longer term with guys like Beardsall and Bataglia leading their sort of lines that they'll probably be finishing higher than Geelong West in the seasons to come. And then you've got Lara, of course, who had a lot of talk during the week about whether they're going to stay in the GFL or not. It's official, they are going to stay in the GFL for next year. But, of course, they sit all by themselves, unfortunately, as it stands at the bottom of the ladder, without a win for 2017.
Mm-hmm. OK, well, let's look to this weekend once again. Where are you off to? Simmons Stadium, of course, and who's going to win and by how much?
Yep, so Kicks FM 89.3, both the Saturday and Sunday, so qualifying final and elimination final you can hear live from 2 o'clock every afternoon. Tips for me, I think Bell Park will get the better of St Mary's, I feel, and Colac will beat Leopold.
Josh Conway, thank you so much for joining us talking Geelong Football League action. I hope you've enjoyed the Geelong Regional Footy Show for this week. Make sure you catch us again next week here on C31, of course, Digital 44, and you have a great weekend at the footy wherever you are.
We come together, the best from all the league, to show them how to play and form a mighty team. The pride of our region with all our favourite sons, never ever beaten, Australia's number 1. We'll get the goals, boys, right from the jump, if we use some handball and never shirk a bump. So give it all your best as we answer to the call.